from a migration standpoint, Richard is interested in two particular sort of topical and popular programs for domestic Malaysians, which is the UK and Australia. The questions that I would ask on this in terms of the UK immigration options is the options that we have for Richard to consider, the due diligence process that's involved in both of the UK, in respect of the UK program, the costs and the investment required, as well as the application time. And I would ask Dominic if he could please sort of help us with understanding from the UK standpoint what's Richard going to be in for when he's looking at this as an immigration program. So Dominic, I think you're here.
Zach, yeah, I'm off mute. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so when we look at the Malaysian market, so from our perspective, there's two sort of interest groups. There's Malaysians in Malaysia who, of course, are not allowed dual citizenship. So very much there's a lot of interest in residence by investment and the various options that are available around the world. And certainly where we see significant interest from our clients that are Malaysian in Malaysia is often into Australia particularly, and also in the UK, where probably education is a bit more of the driver there. And then just as a quick side note, there are of course a lot of non-Malaysians in Malaysia who are also interested in these programs, but also may be from countries, or they may hold nationalities that allow dual citizenship. And then of course some of the other citizenship by investment programs that are available around the world might be interesting for them. So we'll touch on a little bit more of that later. If we look at the UK, as I said, the big driver for families looking at the UK, particularly from Asia, is often around the ability of their children to go and study in the UK. The UK has a number of options available. Of course, there's the typical student visa route. And if it's not education, there's of course, skilled visa routes as well. But from our perspective, we only really focus on those investment migration programs that are available around the world, and also in the UK, where if you meet certain financial capacity and due diligence requirements, you're able to invest sometimes into a business or into some form of investments in the UK, and with that you can get residence in the UK. So by far the most, I would say the most straightforward route into the UK would be the investor program, the Tier 1 investor visa. And this is typically for an applicant that is looking to invest at least £2 million into this used to be able to go into government bonds, which was definitely the preferred route. But the Home Office recently changed the requirements around that. And so the £2 million now would need to go into UK registered actively trading companies. So that can be corporate bonds or shares, typically in an investment account under their name, which they would need to hold for 5 years. And after 5 years, the applicant and their family can acquire permanent residence in the UK, which is known as indefinite leave to remain. It is a tiered program. So the £2 million investment gives you eligibility for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years. You can invest £5 million and get permanent residence after 3 years, or £10 million and be eligible for permanent residence after 2 years. The UK program, though, does require you to actually go and live there in order to earn that permanent residence. So a lot of the programs we work on around the world, the physical presence requirements are, limited to none. But in the UK's case, even if you're investing these amounts, most of our clients from Malaysia, the goal is to get permanent residence there. And if they want that, they would have to spend effectively 6 months in the UK in each of those 5 years. So quite an easy thing to do if the kids are studying there. But depending on the family structure, a lot of our clients in Asia can't afford that amount of time outside of their home country for various reasons. So main focus is really the Tier 1 investor visa. There are two other options which I'll just briefly mention. One is the innovator program. So this replaced what was known as the entrepreneur program a few years back. So the innovator program is for an applicant that's actually looking to start a new business in the UK. Not so straightforward. There's a number of registered endorsing bodies which would need to review the applicant's business proposal and decide whether this business that they intend to bring to the UK meets various tests around innovation and viability and scalability. But if you're going through that innovative program, you are eligible for that indefinite leave to remain after 3 years. And the minimum investment there generally starts at only £50,000. So depending on the client's profile, also interesting in certain circumstances. And then finally, there is also the overseas business program, which is really for a representative of an overseas business. So the main applicant would need to be a senior employee of an overseas business, and that they would look to be coming to the UK to set up a branch or wholly owned subsidiary of that business. And again, with that, they can get residence. And then the final one, which is not really an investor visa, but quite popular in Asia, is just a simple spousal visa. So, you know, a lot of we find a lot of expats that have come over earlier in their careers, and they've sort of built a family here in Asia, and potentially the spouse is not a UK citizen, but if one of the spouses is a UK citizen, it's possible for them to get the spouse visa and move back into the UK as well. So just in a quick nutshell, so those are pretty much the immigration options. Look, the due diligence process is pretty standard, as you would expect. Certainly on the Tier 1 investor visa, a lot of the AML and checks are done by the bank. So one of the changes that came in around the due diligence was it's very clear that you have to show that, you know, the clear source of those funds, and typically the 2 million that's going to be used to make the investment would need to be sitting on an account for at least 2 years prior to the submission. The cost of the investment, I think we've gone through, and the application time can also be quite quick. So the initial entry visa can be obtained in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. But of course, if the client's looking to go through the innovation, where there's these endorsing bodies that need to take a closer look at what this business is, then the process can get a bit longer. But you're looking at anywhere sort of all in from 3 to 6 months for the process, and relatively straightforward.
In terms of the due diligence, they look at the source of funds for the investment, but then they also look at the source of wealth generally of the applicant. How far do they actually go into a full AML review as if they were immediately high-risk sort of customers? How does that work, Dominic?
So, I mean, in terms of the investor visa, obviously they're typically the 99% of the clients would do it through an investment account with a local bank in the UK. So the bank would typically be covering off all of the AML checks. In terms of the process itself, you know, the applicant always has to give police clearance certificates. There's the normal sort of KYC checks that would be done not only by us before we even accept the client, but also by the Home Office itself.
Right, okay. And in respect of the Australian program, again, what are the options that Australia's offering? And then the same, what's the due diligence process look like, the costs and time of application? How does that look as a comparison to the UK program?
Yeah, from a due diligence perspective, it's much the same. You know, clients would always have to provide police clearance certificate. There would be probably a slightly more extensive analysis of the source of funds, and that's also because the amounts that are required for Australia, particularly on the top end, are even higher than the entry level in the UK. Australia, again, as I said, is residence by investment. So both in the UK and Australia, citizenship is possible in the UK after 5 to 6 years, depending on what route they go. And in Australia, a similar time frame, usually after 5 years. But if you want the citizenship, then you've really got to spend physically at least sort of 75% of each of those years in the UK or Australia. And of course, if you're from a country like Singapore or Malaysia that doesn't allow dual citizenship, then it's quite a big decision to make to renounce, you know, the nationality you were born with to take an Australian or UK citizenship. In the Australia program, so we just talk again, Australia has a number of sort of skilled visas, student visa options, but we'll just we only really focus on assisting clients with the investor visas that are available. There's pretty much two broad categories available in Australia. You've got the business innovation stream, which is known as the 188 stream, and there's a couple of options under that. This business innovation or 188 visa class is effectively a two-stage process. So you would make the investment, you would get a temporary residence visa in Australia for 4 years, and subject to certain requirements in terms of the investment and physical presence. After 4 years, you can get permanent residence in Australia, and again later on citizenship if you qualify. The second stream is the business talent program, which is the 132 subclass of visa. And there it's a direct to permanent residence route. So depending on the client, look, as I said, a lot of our clients in Malaysia as well are not ready to move yet. So the two-stage process is okay, because once you become permanent residents, like in a lot of countries, in order to renew that permanent residence or to keep it, you do have to spend some time. So a lot of the clients are happy to go with the 188 stream, which particularly if you go in on the top end, which is a $5 million investment, then you actually only, the physical presence requirements in Australia are quite low. So depending very much on what the clients, what their timing is and what they can do. Most of the clients, we always say, are cash rich and time poor. So, they have the financial capacity to do these things, but it's not so easy to go and spend, a significant amount of time in the country. But we see now, particularly hopefully coming out the back end of this COVID situation, maybe not quite, but a lot of clients are now looking to just have that plan B in place, depending on how long the current situation goes on, and arguably maybe this is not the last pandemic we'll see in our lifetime. So a lot of the clients are looking at Australia and New Zealand as well. We're not going to get into New Zealand today, but New Zealand has significantly picked up in interest as well. Similar structured programs as Australia. In terms of the investment amounts, so the two most popular programs in Australia would be the investor stream and then what's known as the significant investor visa stream. So the investor stream requires a 1.5 million Aussie dollar investment into a state government bond, so it's a relatively low risk. But it's only really for someone that's looking to physically move to Australia. So as I said, it's a 4-year temporary visa. You invest the 1.5 million into a bond. And in order to get permanent residence after 4 years, the applicant would need to spend 2 out of those 4 years physically in Australia. So it requires a bit of a commitment in that regard. What is very popular, of course, is what's known as the SIV, the significant investor visa. That's because it's a higher investment amount, but there's no real requirements in terms of the applicant's personal experience or skills, and the physical presence requirements are also very low. So in order to get permanent residence after 4 years under the SIV, the applicant would only need to spend 160 days over the 4-year period. But in order to have that benefit, it requires a 5 million Australia dollar investment, and that's typically into what they refer to as complying investment. So that is 10% needs to go into venture capital, 30% into small cap emerging companies, and then the balancing 60% can go into bank bonds and that type of thing. So it's a different risk profile in terms of what the investment is going into. But there's a number of fund houses or banks in Australia that have funds set up specifically for the SIV.
Right. And you mentioned New Zealand, and just show on the screen some of the other migration programs. What other programs do Malaysians typically look at other than the UK and Australia, or that you've seen trending?
Yeah, so look, the US and Canada is similar to UK and Australia, still quite popular from an education perspective, but the programs are quite lengthy in terms of the process. So the US has the very well-known EB5 program. That minimum investment went up from 500 to 900,000 US last year. Canada has a pure investment program, but that's currently closed and will probably only start accepting applications next year. Probably the things we do the most, if it's outside of Australia or the UK and Malaysia, Portugal, has one of the most popular programs across many nationalities. It's residents. It's typically a 350 to 500,000 euro real estate investment. It's an interesting investment. Lisbon and Porto and these places are certainly preferred destinations in terms of getting into real estate. And then with that, you're getting a resident card for Portugal. So again, it's that plan B, or just an option if I need one. And also the interesting thing about Portugal again is through this, what they call the Golden Resident Permit program. After 5 years, as long as you can speak elementary level Portuguese, you can also apply for the Portugal citizenship, again, taking into consideration whether your current nationality allows that or not.
Right. And just finally, I think, Dominic, just an update on the MM2H program that Malaysia had in operation for many years. Is there anything that we can sort of report on that?
Yeah, so the latest update is unfortunately just that it's been suspended while the government reviews a few things. So it's been a wildly successful program, relatively low thresholds to get to obtain it. It's a fixed deposit on a bank account in your name for 10 years. You get a 10-year long-term visit pass, and that fixed deposit can range, depending on your age, anywhere from roughly $50,000 to $100,000. But the program was suspended last month. The government has said that they're going to be doing a review of it. Probably we can expect maybe some changes down the line, but the last indication at the moment, we cannot submit applications at the moment, but the last indications of that, the program will open again towards the end of the year.
Right, okay, all right. Okay, thanks very much, Dominic. I think we'll move on now.